Welcome back. This is Mountain Connections. Many people love the holidays and feel like it's the most magical time of the year. But for others, it can be a really, really hard time. They can feel very blue and depressed throughout the holiday season. How do you know if it's something that maybe you can do to help feel better, or if it's more serious and you need to see a professional? Well, I had a discussion about this recently. Here's more.
High expectations, loneliness, and stress can lead to the holiday blues, especially this time of year. For millions of Americans, symptoms of depression can be chronic and severe and have a significant impact on all aspects of life. But how do you know the difference between a case of the holiday blues or something more serious? Here to talk about the signs of challenging to treat depression and treatment options currently available are Dr. Craig Chepke and patient Sally. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Dr. Chepke, tell us more about clinical depression and how it's different than a case of holiday blues.
Sure, I'd love to. So the holiday blues are extremely common right now, and I always say that the holiday season is to a psychiatrist what tax season is to an accountant. It's our busiest time of year, and for some of those people coming in, they may struggle with holiday blues, but that's something that's pretty transient. It kind of comes and goes, and not much needs to be done about it. However, clinical depression, or as we would call it professionally, major depressive disorder, it's a more severe and more persistent type of situation. It can, and generally does persist past the holidays. It can last all year for some people, and the severity is what really sets it apart. It significantly diminishes the person's ability to function. It could make it hard for them to live up to their school responsibilities, work, even their home life. They're not able to hold it together and do what they normally do. So that would be how I would differentiate those two.
Doctor, what is treatment-resistant depression, and what treatment options are even available?
Well, I'm really glad you asked, and that's why we're so glad to have been able to partner with Janssen to come and talk with you today to bring awareness to treatment-resistant depression. So treatment-resistant depression is when people with major depressive disorder, the clinical depression we talked about, have tried and not had success on at least 2 different oral antidepressants. That's what we define as treatment-resistant depression. Now, despite the name, there is hope available. Several years ago, one treatment option was approved by the FDA called Spravato, and it's approved for adults with treatment-resistant depression or adults with major depression who have active suicidal ideation, and they take Spravato along with their traditional oral antidepressant. Now, all medications have different risks and different benefits, and so the important thing is that if you think that this could be a potential option for you, talk with your doctor about it, because it's not going to be right for everyone.
Sally, tell us about your experience with TRD.
Sure. So, I began struggling with depression when I was in college, which I think is similar for a lot of people. But at that point, I began taking an antidepressant, and I began really managing my depression. And I think depression is just like any other disease. It's like heart disease or diabetes. You have to manage it every single day, which is really what I do. I try to manage it every single day. At the beginning of this year, I found like I was really struggling. The antidepressant I was taking wasn't really working. I spoke to my doctor about a new treatment I had heard about, Spravato, on a podcast that I listened to about mental health. And with his help, I was able to connect with a local clinic here where I live, and I qualified as a candidate, and so I began treatment in the spring of this year. And I would say that it's been a big help for me. But depression presents differently for everybody, and the way that you react to treatment may be different for everyone. So I would encourage anyone that is struggling to really reach out and advocate for themselves. Or if you have a friend or family member that seems to be struggling, help them make the phone call. Because sometimes I think when you're in that darkness of depression, it's hard to make that phone call yourself, because you're just you're in such darkness. So I really do encourage people to make that phone call, and if you can't, ask for help.
And Sally, how did you hear about your treatment, and has your experience with the medication impacted your TRD symptoms?
Well, I noticed that I was struggling, and so I was listening to a podcast about mental health and depression, and someone mentioned it on that podcast, and so I spoke to my doctor about it, and then he connected me with the clinic where I live locally, and that's how I began my treatment. But it's not just the medication that I take, it's not just the antidepressants that I take. I also really try to look at it as a whole body approach. I make sure that I'm journaling and meditating and exercising, which is hard to do when you're in the middle of depression, depression, for sure. So I would encourage anyone that if you're struggling and if the antidepressant that you're taking doesn't seem to be working and the things that you normally do to help manage your depression don't seem to be working, speak to your doctor about it, because there are new treatments out there that are available, and really you need to advocate for yourself. Mental health issues are just like any other health issues, and let's help try and take that stigma away. So I encourage anyone that's struggling to really ask for help.
And Sally, what other things do you do in addition to treatment to help manage depressive symptoms?
Sure. So I kind of do a lot of different things. I try to make sure I get exercise. I try to eat right, get enough sleep. Yesterday it was a sunny day where I live, so I made sure I got out even though it was real cold. I got out and had a walk with my dog in the sunshine. And those are the types of things that you need to do along with the medication, counseling, and other things that you do to manage your depression. I think that everyone can find treatment if you make that phone call. So I encourage anyone that's struggling or has a friend or family member that's struggling, make the phone call and try and see if you can get some help.
Dr. Chepke, if someone is out there and struggling or has a loved one who may be struggling with depressive symptoms, what would you tell them?
Sure. The first thing I would say is that it's important not to ignore it and don't just assume that it's going to go away. Let a mental health professional be the one that makes that judgment. And for more information about Spravato, people can go to spravato.com. And I also want to point out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. You can dial that at 1-800-273-TALK, a very important resource for anyone out there who is struggling. And if you are struggling out there, if you're listening and watching, please keep fighting, because there is hope out there and there is help available to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chepke and Sally. I really appreciate this important conversation we've had about depression, the holiday blues, what people can do to get help, and more. And Sally, thanks so much for being open and sharing your personal experiences with it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.